Alrighty then, let's learn some CSS. Okay. Changing list bullets and numbers. Before we close out this chapter on text properties, I want to show you a few tweaks you can make to bulleted and numbered lists. As you know, browsers automatically insert bullets before unordered list items and numbers before items in ordered list. Right, we know that. Okay, for the most part, the rendering of these markers is determined by the browser. However, CSS provides a few properties that allows authors to choose the type and position of the marker to turn them off entirely. Nice. Okay. Choosing a marker. Use the list dash style dash type property to select the type of marker that appears for each list item. Okay. List dash style dash type. Disk, circle, square, decimal, decimal leading 0, lower alpha, lower Latin, upper Latin. Okay. Default is disk, applies to unordered list, ordered list, and list element or element whose display value is list item. Okay, it inherits. Right. This section documents the CSS 2.1 list style types, list style. Okay, that are well supported on current browsers. CSS3 extends on the markup functionality shown here, including a method for authors to define their own list styles, allowing for numbering in many languages. More often than not, developers use the list style type property with its value set to none to remove bullets or numbers altogether. Okay. This is handy when using list markup as the foundation for a horizontal navigation menu or the entries in a web form. You can keep the semantics but get rid of the pesky markers. That is great. The disk, circle and square values generate bullet shapes just as browsers. Okay, disk, circle, square. Bullet shapes just as browsers have been doing since the beginning. Unfortunately, there is no way to change the appearance, the size, color, etc. of generated bullets, so you're basically stuck with the browser's default rendering. Okay. Then we have a note. CSS3 introduces box, check, diamond, and dash markers using its new counter dash style rule. See the spec for more details. Okay, we will. Okay. Then we have the remaining keywords specify various numbering and letters. Okay, in this table, decimal 1 to 3 or leading 0. Okay, for alpha, lower Latin, same as lower alpha, upper Latin, lower Roman, upper Roman, don't see a difference, lower Greek. Ooh, this table is funky, I like it. List item display role. You may have noticed that the list style properties applies to elements whose display value is list item. The CSS 2.1 specification allows any element to perform like a list item by setting its display property to list item. Okay. This property can be applied to any HTML element or elements in another XML language. For example, you could automatically bullet or number a series of paragraphs by setting the display property of paragraph p element to list item p dot bulleted. Okay. Then we have list item this. Okay. Then we have marker position. By default, the marker hangs outside the content area for the list item, displaying as a hanging indent. Okay. What is a marker? Okay, this marker outside and this is inside. Alright. Marker hangs outside the content area. The list style position. Okay, so we used a list style type and then we have list style position. Okay, so then we have marker position. By default, the marker hangs outside the content area for the list item, displaying as a hanging indent. The list style position property allows you to pull the bullet inside the content area so it runs into the list content. Okay. With the note, the CSS3 adds the hanging value for, okay, we have inside outside hanging value for the property. It is similar to inside, but the markers would appear outside and abutting the left edge of the shaded area as shown. Okay, the outside and this is inside. Okay, hanging. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. I've applied a background color to the list items in figure 12 to 4. Yes, okay. To reveal the boundaries of the content area boxes, you can see that when the position is set to outside, the markers fall outside the content area, and when it is set to inside, the content area box extends to include the marker. Okay, so we can an outside list item outside and list item inside. That's how you apply this. Okay, then we can even add an image. Make your own bullets. You can also use your own image as a bullet. Uh, you can also use your own image as a bullet using the list style image property. Is there support for ASCII? Okay, we have. Oh, great. The value of the list style image property is the URL of the image you want to use as a marker. Okay, list style image URL. The list type, the list style type is set to disk as a backup. Okay, circle. And position is outside. As a backup in case the image does not display or the property isn't supported by the browser or the user agent. Great. Okay, hold up. Okay, let's continue. So this is this. Then we have, there's a list style shorthand property that combines the value for the type, position and image in any order. Okay, list style URL. Sorry. As for all shorthand properties, be careful not to override list style properties set earlier in the style sheet. Okay. Test yourself. Okay, here's a chance to get a little practice writing selectors using the diagram 12 to 6. This diagram. Write a style rule that makes each of the elements described below colored red. Write the selector as efficiently as possible. I've done the first one for you. Okay. All text element in the document body. Okay, then h2. Okay. So I'll go h2. Then color red. Right, let's decrease the size. Then we have h1 and so we will use a group selector. Color red. Then all elements belonging to class special, so we will use a dot, then special. So mean everything belonging to special will have color red. Then all elements in the intro section, so we will just put a hash div intro, right? ID is intro, so intro, then color red. Then strong elements in main, so we will go main, and then contextual, then strong element, and div main, right? So it knows that this is main, and within main I want strong. Go color red. Okay, extra credit, just the paragraph that appears after h2. Okay, h2 plus, so this is just after h2, so we will use plus red. Okay, So there we go. Are these in the appendix? I think all elements in the intersection. I'll just quickly take a look. Where are selectors? Um, okay, hold up. There we go. There are text line info, right? Issue and all info. So everything in the info, right? That's how you do everything in info. I think I'm mostly right. Yeah, I feel like I'm mostly right. Yeah, contextual. Then this is just ID. Then this is class. This is group, and this is selector. Oh, what is this? This is not contextual. This is specific. Specific or just a single selector? I don't remember. Let me take a look. Various text properties. Okay, and okay, right. Using selectors. Yes. So so this rules only paragraph contained within info. So info and p. Right. tt info. So everything. So let's together document divs info advertiser. We can use this advantage when it comes to. For now, let's do simple and make all text in the header teal. So we will dash info. We in the info we are making everything teal. Okay. So I was right, but specificity, that's okay. Class selectors, ID selectors. Okay, there was child selector, then adjacent just after. General purpose selector, descendant selector, few more selector. This is element selector. Yes, okay. This is called an element selector. Okay, let's keep going. Right. Okay. So match the style property with the text symbol in font size 1.5. Okay, default font size is 1.5 is I feel it'll text transform capitalize. Let me see where are the capital. So there we go. Okay, maybe I can just write the number, right? So 1.5. Okay, this is capitalize and uppercase. Oh, only the first letter is big. So let me take a look where only the first letter is capital. Yeah, there we go, 1. So capitalize, this is 1. Then we have, I think I had a uppercase, so I know uppercase 8. Uppercase is 8. Then we have text indent between the text, that is 2m. So I feel there we go, 2 text indent. Then font variant is small caps but small. Okay, so uppercase was 8. Then small caps, I feel like this is it. This is 6. Okay, so then we have bold italic 1.2m. Okay, letter spacing. Letter is word. So where is the spacing between the word? Is 3 pixels. Spacing between the words is 3 pixels. I don't know. Okay, so okay. Family text line right. 7th. Then we have italic and 1.2 em. This is italic. Where is italic? And 1.2 em. Bold italic. Okay, so bold italic and 1.2 em. I think this is right. 9th, I suppose. This 1.2, I think, yeah, that's ninth. Then we have font size 1.5. Without looking bold, I figure fourth is 1.5. Right. Then I'm left with these two, font family Verdana and 1.5 m. Okay, where was Verdana, and I think 3 is this. And what is left? 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth. This, right? This is letter spacing is 5. Text indent. Okay, text. I feel like text indent or letter spacing. Text indent. Oh, sorry. This is the indentation, right? Fifth. So this is actually fifth. And if this is fifth, then second, then this is letter. Yeah, letter spacing 3 pixels. This is actually 2. So we have this. Okay, I'm really curious, are there answers in the appendix? Answers, yes. Okay, where do I start? Chapter 3. There we go, there we go, there we go, there we go, there we go. Chapter 12, right? I was in chapter 12. Okay. Body issue dot, right? Hash intro, hash main strong. Perfect. Okay, so I have A4B1, 588, and this is 279. Okay, so A4B1 280, 588. Okay, A4B1 C7D3, C7D3E2, C7D3E2. Nice. Sorry, 588. F9G8H5. F9G8H5 and I6, obviously, if I was correct. Okay, so there we go. Then we move on to chapter 13, colors and backgrounds. Okay, colors and backgrounds, plus even more selectors and external style sheets. Okay. If you had seen the web back in 1993, you would have found it to be a fairly dreary affair by today's standard. Even background was grey and all the text was black. Then came Netscape Navigator, and with it a handful of attributes that allowed rudimentary but welcome control over the font colors and backgrounds. For years we made do, but thankfully we now have style sheet properties that have laid those unmentionable presentational attributes to rest. We're going to cover a lot of ground in this chapter. Of course, I'll introduce you to all of the properties for specifying backgrounds, for specifying colors and backgrounds. Okay, of course, I'll introduce you to all of the properties for specifying colors and backgrounds. This chapter also rounds out your collection of selector types and shows you how to create an external style sheet. Our first order of business, however, is to explore the options for specifying colors in CSS, including a primer on the nature of colors on computer monitors. Okay, specifying colors. There are two main ways to specify colors in style sheets: with a predefined color name, as we've been doing so far, or more commonly with a numeric value described that describes a particular RGB color. Okay, you may have seen values like this. We'll also get in and out of the RGB color in the moment, but first a short and sweet section on the standard color names. Okay, so color names. The most intuitive ways to specify a color is to call it by name. Unfortunately, you can't make up just any color name and expect it to work. It has to be one of the color keywords predefined in CSS recommendation. Obviously. Okay. CSS1 and CSS2 adopted the 16 standard color names originally introduced in HTML 4.01. CSS2 tossed in orange for a total of 17. CSS3 add support for the extended set of 140 as the fanciful color names. Now we can specify names like Burlywood and my long-term favorite Papaya Web. The extended colors are shown, but if you want a more accurate view, point at this. Okay, orange, blue, teal. Okay, Fuchsia. I don't know. Okay, color names are easy to use. Just drop one in place as a value for any color related property. Okay, alrighty then. The 140 extended color names in CSS3. Bear in mind that these will look quite different on a screen. Okay, RGB color values. Names are easy, but as you can see, they are limited. By far, the most common way to specify a color is by its RGB value. It also gives you millions of colors to choose from. Okay. For those who are not familiar with how computers deal with colors, I'll start with the basics before jumping into CSS syntax. A word about RGB colors. Computers create the colors you see on a monitor by combining three colors of light. Okay, there was a note. I think I missed it. Okay. The extended color names, also known as X11 color names, were originally provided with the X window system for Unix. Okay. For those who are not familiar with how computers deal with colors, I'll start with the basic before jumping into CSS syntax. A word about RGB color. Oh, this is important piece of history. I think I should mark it as yellow. It's good to know. Yeah. Okay. Computers create the colors you can see on a monitor by combining three colors of light: red, green, and blue. This is known as the RGB color model. You can provide recipes of sorts for color by telling the computer how much of each color to mix in. The amount of light in each color channel is typically described on a scale from 0, none to 255 full blast, although it can also be provided as a percent. The closer the 3 value get to 255 100%, the closer the resulting color gets to white. Okay. Now any color you see on your monitor can be described by a series of 3 numbers: a red value, a green value, and a blue value. Right. This is one of the ways that image editors such as Adobe Photoshop keep track of the colors for every pixel in an image. With the RGB color system, a pleasant lavender can be described as 200, 178, 230. Okay. Colors on computer monitors are made by mixing different amounts of red, green, blue light, thus RGB. The color in the middle of each diagram shows what happens when 3 color channels are combined. The more light there is in each channel, that is, the higher the number value, the closer the combination is to white. Okay. Picking a color. The easiest way to pick a color and find its RGB color values. Okay, the easiest way to pick a color and find its RGB color values is to use an image editing tool such as Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Fireworks, or Corel Paint, Shop Pro Photo. Most image tools provide a color picker similar to Photoshop's, shown here. Okay. If you don't have an image editor, you can select a color from an online tool like colorpicker.com. Okay, so we have white, 0, okay, lavender. Okay. White 255. In RGB color, 8 bits of information are devoted to each color channel. 8 bits can describe 256 shapes. So colors are measured from a scale from here to here. Okay, good to know. There are several ways to define color on monitors. The two that are relevant to CSS are RGB and HSL. Okay. RGB is the most commonly used and well supported, so we'll focus on that here. But see the sidebar HSL color for more information on the alternative. Okay, HSL. CSS3 introduces the ability to specify colors by their HSL values: hue, saturation, and lightness. The color picker in figure 13.4 also provides HSL values So say HSL values for the selected color, although they call the last value brightness. Okay. HSV, hue, saturation, lightness, brightness. It's all the same. Right. HSB, RGB. In this system, the colors are spread out around a circle in the order of rainbow, with the red at the top, 12 o'clock position. Hue values are then measured in degrees around the circle at 0 degree, red at 0 degree, okay, green at 120, blue at 240, with the other colors in between. Saturation is a percentage value. Saturation is a percentage value from 0% gray to 100% color. Okay, lightness or brightness is also percentage from. I don't think I'll mark it as green. Okay, some people find the system more intuitive to use because once you lock into hue, it's easy to make it stronger, darker, or lighter. RGB values are not intuitive at all. Although some practice designer develop a feel for them. Okay. In CSS, HSL values are provided as a hue, as the hue value and 2 percentages. They are never converted to hexadecimal values as may be done for RGB. Okay, right. Okay, writing RGB values in a style sheet. CSS allows RGB color values to be specified in a number of formats. Going back to that pleasant lavender, we could add it to a style sheet by listing each value on a scale from 0 to 255. Okay, then you can also list them as percentage values, although that is less common. Okay, good to know. Or you can provide the 6-digit hexadecimal version that we saw in the color pickers. These 6 digits represent the same RGB values, except they have been converted into hexadecimal or hex for short equivalents. I'll explain the hexadecimal system in the next section. Note that hex RGB values are preceded and do not require the RGB notation shown in the previous example. Okay. Note that hex RGB values are preceded by the hash symbol and do not require the RGB notation shown in the previous example. They may be upper or lower case, but it is recommended that you be consistent. Okay. Sorry. Then we move on to there is one last shorthand way to specify hex color values. If your values happen to be made up of 3 pairs of double digits or letters, such as this. Okay, you can condense each pair down to 1-digit letter. The benefit is slightly reducing the file size of a CSS document. These examples are equivalent to those one listed above. Okay, so okay. So at a glance, specifying RGB values, there are 4 formats of providing RGB values. This. Oh. About hexadecimal values, right? It's time to clarify what's going on with the 6-digit string of characters. What you're looking at is actually a series of 3 2-digit numbers, one each for red, green, and blue. But instead of decimal, base 10, the system we used to, these values are written in hexadecimal or base 16. Handy hex values. Okay, FFF is 255 and 000 is for black. Okay, the hexadecimal number system uses 16 digits 0 to 9 and A to F for representing quantities 10 to 15, and figure 13.6 shows how this works. Right, okay. The hex system is used widely in computing because it reduces the space it takes to store certain information. For example, the RGB values are reduced from 3 to 2 digits once they are converted to hexadecimal. 20, 2 16ths and 0 ones, 2 16ths and 10 ones. Right. So it is 32 plus 10. Oh. Maybe up to here. Yeah. I like to think of this. Oh, that is great. Okay. Then we move on to, now that most graphics and web development softwares provides easy access to hexadecimal color values, there isn't much need to translate RGB values to hex yourself, as we needed to do back in the old days. But should you find the need, the hexadecimal calculator sidebar should help you out. Okay, so hexadecimal calculators. In Windows, the standard calculator has a hexadecimal converter in the scientific view. Mac users, is there scientific, is there a hex? I don't see data. Gigabyte, is there hexabytes? No. Pressure, angle, time, speed, area, energy, temperature, currency, data, programmer. Yes, there we go. Oh, there we go. Hex. Okay, 9A. This is hex 9A, decimal 154. Nice. Okay. In Windows, the standard calculator has a hexadecimal converter in the scientific view. Mac users can download the free Mac Dec Pin Hex Calculator for OS X. Of course, you could calculate a hex value yourself by dividing your digit by 16 to get the first digit, and then using the remainder for the second digit. For example, okay, I don't want to get into it. I know how to do that. Okay. Then we move on to RGBA color. The RGBA color allows you to specify a color and makes it as transparent or as opaque as you like. The A in RGBA stands for alpha, which indicates additional channel that controls the level of transparency from 0 to fully transparent, and 1 or it should be 255, I think. No? Okay. Here's how it looks written in style. The first three values in the parentheses are regular old RGB values. Okay. In this case, creating a color black. The fourth value 0.5 is the transparency level. So this color is black with 50% transparency. This will allow the other colors background to show through slightly. Sorry. Alright, let's go yellow. Okay. So this is 0.1, 10%, 50% and 100%. This is 10% opaqueness, 50% opaqueness and 100% opaqueness. Okay, there's a complication, however, and its name is Internet Explorer. IE version 8 and earlier do not support RGBA color, so you need to provide a fallback for the users with those behaviors. The easiest is to just pick a fully opaque color that approximates the look you are going for and list it first in the style rule. Okay. I will ignore RGBA value and the other browser override the opaque value. Okay, well, that HSL color can be given a transparency level as well using a HSLA. Okay, good to know. But you simply must have true transparency and IE. Then you can provide alternatives, a transparent PNG or an IE proprietary filter specificity. Okay, we are not, fortunately the RGBA supported has okay. No, shit. Targeting IE with conditional comments. Conditional comments. Ooh. Conditional comments. Okay. Internet Explorer's conditional comment syntax provides a way. Okay. Are these conditional comments? Conditional comments in HTML. Are there conditional comments? Are they still valid? Okay. targeting specific version. Okay, conditional element are a feature used to specific for applying browser specific code. They are particularly useful for handling compatibility. Ah, if and if. Okay, so let me go to ChatGPT and we get, let's say, conditional comments part of HTML5. No, conditional comments are not a part of HTML5. Conditional comments were a proprietary features used in okay, much better. So I can get rid of this. Summing of color values. It took us a few pages to get here, but the process for picking and specifying colors in style sheets is actually easy. Pick one of the predefined color names or use a color picker to select a color and copy down the RGB values, preferably the 6-digit hex values. Put those values in the style rule using one of the 4 RGB value formats and you're done. Or you could use HSL if that floats your boat. Okay, there's actually one more colorful way to fill an element, and that's gradients. Colors that fade from one hue to another, but that opens up a whole can of worms, namely vendor prefixes that I don't want to get into right now, so I'm going to save CSS gradients for the end of this chapter. Alright, so we'll just highlight it. Okay. Foreground color, another property. Now that we know how to write color names, let's get to the color related properties. You can specify the foreground and background colors of any HTML element. There are also border color properties. Okay, so foreground, so we'll get to in border color next. The foreground of an element consists of its text and the border if one is specified. You specify a foreground color with a color property, as we saw in the last chapter when we rolled it out to give text a little pizzazz. Okay. Here are the details of the color property, one at a color property one more time. Okay, so we have color values and then yes, numeric or whatever. In the following example, which example? This example. Okay. In the following example, the foreground color of block quote element is set to a nice green with a value this. We'll use hex code, and you can see that by applying the color property to the block code, the color is inherited by the P and AM element it contains. Block code P and right. Okay. It contains. The thick dashed border around the whole block quote is green as well. Okay, but we didn't provide a border. Okay, we did provide a border, right? Okay, so it is important because it will apply if there is a border specified. If one is specified. Okay, the thick dashed border around the whole block quote is green as well. However, if we were to apply a border color property to the same element, that color would override the green foreground setting. Okay. This is foreground. Okay, so simple color foreground. Then we have background. Okay, use the background color property to add a background color to any element. Background color values is color names, transparent or transparent, default is transparent, and all elements. Okay, inherit it. Okay, the elements don't inherit it. Okay, so we have a background color fills the canvas behind the element. That includes the content area and any padding extra space added around the content, extending behind the border to its outer edges. Let's see what happens when we use the background color property to make the background of the sample light blue. Okay, so we go light blue. Okay, I missed something here. Yeah, the web palette. You will certainly come across a web palette of web safe colors while reading about web design or using such web production tools as Dreamweaver or Photoshop. Web safe values are easy to spot. They are made up of exclusively of hex. Okay. The web palette is a set of 216 colors that browsers use to render color on low-end monitors that are capable of displaying only 256 colors at a time. The 216 colors consist of the cross-section of colors used by both Windows and Macintosh operating systems. I don't think the web palette is still might be in use. Okay, back when most users had low-end monitors, web designers stuck with web-safe colors because they rendered smoothly and predictably. Okay, however, because monitors with only 256 colors are virtually extinct as of this writing. Okay, so I think I'll put. Virtually extend as this writing, browsers really need to remap colors in web pages to the web palette. That means there is no longer the need to restrict your color choices. Improved technology has made the web palette obsolete. Alright. Okay, so we have, as expected, the background color fills the area behind the text all the way to the border. So we have look closely at the gaps in the border and you'll see that the background color actually goes all the way to its outer edge. Yes, there. Okay, but that's where the background stops. If we apply a margin to the element, the background will not extend into the margin. When we talk about CSS box model, we will revisit all these components of an element. For now, just know that if your border has gaps, the background will show through. Okay. It's worth noting that background colors do not inherit, but because the default background setting for all elements is transparent, the parent's background color shows through its descendant elements. Okay. For example, you can change the background color of a whole page by adding background color property to the body element. The color will show through all the elements on the page. Right. Okay. In addition to the setting of color of the whole page, you can change the background color of any element. Okay, you can change the background color of any element, both block level, like the block code shown in the previous example, as well as inline. In addition to setting the color of the whole page, you can change the background color of any element. Okay, inline, so block element or as well as inline, you can change the. Okay, in this example I've used the color and background color properties to highlight a word marked up glossary term. You can glossary baseline. Okay, dark brown and light yellow. So you can see background fills a little box created by the inline element. Yeah. Okay, so let's using color. Here are a few quick tips related to working with color. Limited the number of colors you use on page. Nothing creates visual chaos faster than too many colors. I tend to choose one dominant color and one highlight color. Okay, I may also use a couple of shades of each, but I resist adding too many hues. Okay. So when specifying a foreground and background color, make sure that there is adequate contrast. Okay. People tend to prefer reading dark text on very light backgrounds online. Okay, this is important. Okay, I'm going to read it. My sample 1309, although making its point, actually fails the contrast. 13.9. Okay, this, yeah. Contrast stuff. It's a good idea to specify the foreground color and the background color, particularly for whole pages, in tandem. This will avoid possible color clashes and contrast problems if the user has one or other set. If the user has one or the other set with the user style sheet. Okay. To color the background of the whole page, apply the background dash color property to the body element. Right. Okay. We're playing with opacity. Earlier we talked about the RGBA color format that adds a level of transparency when it is applied to the color background. There is another way to make an element slightly see-through, and that's the CSS3 property, opacity. Opacity, number 0 to 1, default is 1. Okay, the value of the opacity is a number between completely transparent 0 and 1 completely opaque. Okay. And a color, a value of 0.5 gives the element an opacity of 50%. The opacity setting applies to the entire element, both the foreground and the background, if one has been set. If you want to just affect one of the other, use the RGB color value instead. Okay. Point 0.5, then we have 1. Okay. In the following code example, a heading has been given a color of green and a background of white. When the opacity property is set, it allows background of the page to show through the text and the element. Okay. There we go. Okay. Oh, but guess what? This very nifty trick won't work if you're using okay, to set transparency for browsers, use the specific filters as shown, blah blah blah. The first declaration I get the zoom property ensures the okay, so at a glance you have element selector, group selector, descendant, ID selectors, class selectors, and universal selector. Here's a quick summary of selectors. Right. Okay, so I think that's enough for today. And you may be itching to take this color that class balance. Okay, so I'll continue pseudo class selectors from next time on. So for today,